They have a very important role clinically, because obviously there are many patients with heart failure, and they're looked after not just by experts, they're looked after by general cardiologists, as well as cardiologists with an interest in heart failure, and by general medical physicians. So it's very important that the heart failure guidelines really synthesize evidence-based medicine for the non-specialists. So they're very important in the sense that they have to be very clear, because they are used by general physicians and by cardiologists who are not experts to treat heart failure, which is a very complex condition to treat. Within the European Society of Cardiology family of guidelines, there is some degree of harmony between them, in that, as you say, heart failure patients have many other diseases. They've got frequent comorbidities, be they kidney disease, diabetes, atrial fibrillation. So within the European Society of Cardiology family of guidelines, we do try to harmonise so that AF in one guideline is treated the same as AF in another guideline. So that part of the guideline family is fairly harmonious, in as much as it can be, because of course things change over time, and guidelines on heart failure may report at a different time than guidelines with atrial fibrillation. But internationally, there isn't any great coordination between the many guidelines, American guidelines, NICE guidelines, Australian guidelines, Canadian guidelines. So they can end up saying slightly different things. There's usually no major differences between them, but they can say slightly different things. Well, the actual guideline process itself is fairly transparent and consists of groups of experts around a table discussing what should go in the guideline and what the strength of the evidence is. So the actual writing of a guideline is now a fairly robust and simple process. Regarding how often they should be updated, currently they're on a sort of 4 or 5 year cycle of being updated. That means that sometimes you miss important updates for another 4 or 5 years. So there are other approaches to do this. I mean, the Americans and the Canadians do focused updates on short bits, and they perhaps could be online in the future and then appended to the guideline. But at the moment, there's no firm process for that. Well, at the moment, certainly in the European guidelines for heart failure, biomarkers only really have a role in diagnosis, whereas in the American guidelines, the role of biomarkers has already been taken a stage further to use them for prognostic reasons, and also to think about using them for monitoring therapy. So I think as we see more trials with biomarkers for monitoring therapy and trials of newer biomarkers beyond the natriuretic peptides, we may see those a bit more in the guidelines in the future.